Okay, I'm going to dive right in. We've got some exciting things to talk about today. But before we dive in, one more thing. On your control panel in the GoToWebinar, you'll see a questions box. So I'm going to talk for maybe 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to have some Q&A time in that question box. That's how the interaction works best. That's why everyone's muted. The problem is if we unmute everyone, there's all kinds of echoes and it just doesn't work well. So there's a question box. You can type in your questions there. Rob, if you can monitor the questions and maybe interrupt me if there's a question along the way. Otherwise, we'll save the questions for the end. So I'm going to get started. The title of this talk is really about leading with an entrepreneurial mindset, and it's part of a larger opportunity here to work together with the community and technical college system of West Virginia to create a national model for creating an entrepreneurial community college system. And this is a super exciting opportunity afforded to us through a partnership with the Kauffman Foundation and the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, which is, of course, that's me, that's us. What we do, we are the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. We provide entrepreneurial mindset education and training programs, seminars, workshops, keynotes, individual coaching, and organizational consulting for academic, corporate, government, non-government clients worldwide. That's what we do. Our focus is on the entrepreneurial mindset. So just to step back for a minute, we're coming from a perspective that the world has changed in ways that now require everyone to learn how to think like an entrepreneur. And I really want to emphasize think like an entrepreneur. I don't mean to say that everyone needs to start a business. I'm saying that that wages have stagnated, that lower paying or lower skilled, high paying jobs are gone. That whether you're going to work in an established organization, whether you're going to join the new gig economy, or you're going to start a business, it doesn't really matter. Everyone needs to learn how to think like an entrepreneur, and everyone can benefit from learning how to think like an entrepreneur. Big thinkers have latched on to this idea, right? That it's not enough to add entrepreneurship on the perimeter, that it needs to be at the core of the way education operates. So this is from a paper published recently by the World Economic Forum, and you know what they're saying here, it's not enough to just have an entrepreneurship program off somewhere in the perimeter of your college or university, that we need to infuse entrepreneurial thinking across disciplines throughout the curriculum and out into the community. So the question is, how do we do that? That's really the big challenge, and I'll talk about some of the research we've done. But before I do that, what I want to talk about is this basic premise that entrepreneurial activity is vital to a healthy economy, to a healthy society. And learning how to think like an entrepreneur can really be a game changer for an individual and for the organization that that individual works within, that the community that individual lives and functions within. So learning how to think like an entrepreneur kind of teaches us how to recognize opportunities that others overlook. It also helps cultivate the creativity, the critical thinking, the communication, the problem-solving skills that have become essential for both individuals and organizations to adapt and thrive in this new, rapidly changing, highly complex world that we're now living in. So again, the question becomes, how do we learn how to think like an entrepreneur? And part of the challenge here is that our understanding of the entrepreneur is still quite nascent, and we really, you know, we've more or less ignored entrepreneurs for the last century, and we don't really understand the causes of their behavior. And so when we hear the word entrepreneur, many of us think of these, the wunderkinds that these young people in Silicon Valley at elite universities, they come up with these great ideas. They get tens of millions of venture funding and, these meteoric rises to billionaire status. And these high growth, the image of the high tech, high growth entrepreneur is very, very prevalent in social media in that way. But the challenge is those represent a very, very tiny, minute sliver of the entrepreneurial activity that's happening around the world. So there's clearly a visibility versus representation issue at hand. The popularity of shows like Shark Tank and others that have emerged, the Dragon's Den and what have you, have really brought attention to the interest in entrepreneurship. Yet, we can't really rely on reality television to inform ourselves about how to be innovative and entrepreneurial. A lot of people hear the word entrepreneur and they think, okay, I'm going to open a Main Street small business, a cupcake shop, a bicycle repair, whatever. That's also part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But part of what we've really kind of tripped into in our discovery here is by looking at entrepreneurship as a behavioral phenomenon rather than a business discipline. We kind of cracked the code by looking at it from this perspective. It's, starting a business is one potential outcome of learning how to think like an entrepreneur. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Some people look at entrepreneurs in a negative way. And again, there are good reasons for this perspective, right? With, corporate scandals and so forth. Some people equate entrepreneurship with sort of an exploitative mindset, those who would exploit others simply for their own gain. Again, good reasons for this perspective, yet it doesn't really tell the whole story. There's also an important cohort that we have to talk about, and those are the millions and millions of people who don't really understand entrepreneurship, and the people for whom the term entrepreneurship is irrelevant, right? Why do I need to learn about entrepreneurship? I have no intention of starting a business. So we also need to bring these folks into the conversation. We need to redefine entrepreneurship in a way that everyone can participate. So back in the day, 2008, I started to do a deep dive in a research project in a partnership with the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute in San Jose, California. And they hired me to do, they hired Eli to do a gap analysis on the entrepreneurship education ecosystem, and then to fill some of these gaps. And what we very quickly found is that the mindset and the methods of the everyday typical entrepreneur is largely disconnected from the way entrepreneurship is being portrayed in the media, from the way entrepreneurship is being portrayed in classrooms and small business development centers. And so that's why really Eli was born. We set out to really sort of reconcile that difference, right? And so we began to study the mindset and the methods of the typical entrepreneur. I had this tremendous opportunity with Cisco to start interviewing hundreds of entrepreneurs across the US, what I'll call unlikely entrepreneurs, the underdogs and the misfits, people who did not self-identify as entrepreneurs. These were people, I wanted to understand the mindset and the methods of ordinary people who have no particular advantage in life, right? I wanted to understand how underdogs win. How does an ordinary person who may not have big ideas, who may not have an Ivy League degree, who may not have access to venture capital, who may not be particularly charismatic or brilliant or creative, how do these ordinary people manage to rise above their circumstances and transform a simple idea into some kind of sustainable endeavor that not only benefits them, but benefits the broader community, the society within which they live and work. So there is sort of the criteria that I was looking for, and sort of put some parameters on my understanding of what it means to be innovative and entrepreneurial. So as part of the Cisco project, I got to go across the country interviewing hundreds and hundreds of these underdog entrepreneurs. One particular story that really caught my attention was the story of Clifton Tolbert and the influence of his uncle Cleve as he came of age in the late 1950s in this small cotton community in rural Mississippi. And he talked to me. Clifton was not only a Pulitzer-nominated author, he was one of the co-founders of the Stairmaster Exercise Company that was founded in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he attributed his entrepreneurial mindset to the learning from his uncle Cleve, who the guy that owned the local ice house in 1958 in Glen Allen, Mississippi. And Clifton said, it was my uncle Cleve that taught me how to think like an entrepreneur. And he pulled this picture out of a shoebox and he showed me Uncle Cleve, and he said, you know, he was different than anyone else. He walked with a little more confidence in his step. He was by no means cocky or arrogant. You know, we weren't allowed in the bank, but he had money in the bank. And every 2 weeks we went into Jefferson and we had to go in the back door and we put the money in the bank. And he started to describe his Uncle Cleve, and I very quickly recognized that the messages, the mindset, and the methods that Uncle Cleve was teaching young Clifton, 13 years old at the time, in 1958, were the same fundamental concepts that I had heard from many, many, many different entrepreneurs. And so about 2 years later, I convinced Clifton to co-author a book with me, which is called Who Owns the Ice House? And there's 8 life lessons from an unlikely entrepreneur, which is really the distillation of hundreds of interviews told through a single story. And this book became the basis of the Ice House entrepreneurship programs. My computer just likes to do that from time to time. I apologize. So the book, with some support from the Kauffman Foundation, the book was transformed into the Ice House entrepreneurship programs. And this program has been used in a variety of ways. I want to talk a little bit about this scholarship opportunity that the Kauffman Foundation and Eli have provided for the West Virginia Community and Technical College system. So what we discovered by analyzing the mindset and the methods of hundreds of entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurship is really an opportunity discovery process. And it requires opportunity discovery skills. And as you're going to see, these are skills that anyone can learn to develop. They're simply skills that our systems of education, our cultural value systems, our corporate structures, our family structures have historically overlooked or undervalued or ignored. So it's really a deceptively simple thing. So I want to just kind of lay out this Ice House program is based on these 8 concepts that we distilled from hundreds of interviews with unlikely entrepreneurs. And sort of the foundation of the whole thing is the choices that the entrepreneur is making. And more specifically, what I'm saying is the entrepreneurs are mostly unwittingly or unconsciously, they're tapping into this tremendous power by choosing a compelling goal. They're striving towards a vision or some kind of compelling goal on the horizon that they're striving to achieve. And in the facilitator training, I'll dive much more deeply into the psychological literature and the research around this sort of future positive orientation and how that changes people. What I will say about that now is that we're seeing more and more research that the awareness of opportunity creates a psychological and a physiological response within an individual, not unlike the awareness of a threat. The awareness of a threat elicits a fight or flight response, like kind of a move away from, where the awareness of an opportunity creates a compelling a response that creates an engagement response. And one of the really astonishing things that's emerged from our research is that entrepreneurial experiences create a very, very powerful incentive to learn. And I'll say much more about that in the training. So it all starts with this compelling future. There's some sort of a goal we're reaching for. The entrepreneurs tend to look at problems as opportunities. It's a deceptively simple concept that changes everything. Every problem, frustration, or unmet need they encounter, they tend to go through these exercises like, why are we doing it this way? And how could I do this better? How could this be improved? So problems are looked at as opportunities. The entrepreneurs, these underdog entrepreneurs, tend to display a bias towards action that is often misinterpreted as recklessness. But when you look closer, what they tend to do is micro experiment. They learn by doing, but they contain the experiments. They're not gamblers. They're more like detectives. And they design and conduct small experiments to test their ideas in the real world before they go all in. What we've also observed is entrepreneurs are avid learners, and they tend to be lifelong self-directed learners who learn through both formal and informal means. So we see this as sort of the engine of entrepreneurial activity. We look at problems as opportunities, we design and conduct micro experiments, and we learn constantly through the process. As a result, we learn how to become resourceful. We learn about the differences in spending versus investing our time and attention. We learn how to build a brand. We learn how to become reliable. If we're going to be solving problems for other people, excuses won't really work. We need to learn to build a brand of reliability. What entrepreneurs also tend to do is they create a community of support system, just like a root system in a forest. They tend to build these systems. They rely on one another for knowledge and support in the process. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, they tend to develop a resilience that enables them to keep getting up as they get knocked down. And that's the psychology and the science behind that is a very fundamental part of the Ice House entrepreneurship programs. So the Ice House programs have some basic overall objectives: to inspire and engage the participant. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. To focus on the mindset of the entrepreneur. The mindset is the transferable. It's like once we understand the underlying logic, then we can apply it to our own thinking. Again, I want to point out that learning how to think like an entrepreneur can benefit us in myriad ways. Not everyone wants to start a business per se, yet most human beings want to be engaged in work that matters. They want to see their work contributing to others around them. They want to see a path towards a better life. The Ice House programs are based on experiential problem-based learning, which is ironically what entrepreneurs tend to do in the real world. It's designed to connect the classroom with the broader community, and it's designed as a scalable solution, one where the instructor or the facilitator does not need to be an expert in a subject matter expert, right? Other than completing our 3-day training program, which we're offering scholarships for, you don't need to know anything about entrepreneurship. And some of our most successful facilitators came to us not really understanding anything about entrepreneurship at all. So it's really designed as a facilitated program. You don't need to be a subject matter expert. So it's entrepreneurial learning relies on experiential learning, problem-based learning, peer-to-peer learning. We're teaching each other, and self-directed learning. That's the basic structure. Again, we'll get into all of that during the training should you decide to throw your hat in the ring here. And I'll talk about this opportunity in a moment. So we've developed this tool called the Opportunity Discovery Process, the Icehouse Opportunity Discovery Canvas. And it's really a simple tool to help people identify, evaluate, and bring ideas to life. And I won't, again, dive into this too deeply here, but it's a canvas, right? So we're asking people to create a hypothesis. And it starts with inquiry and observation. It's really a problem. It starts with problem-finding questions. Just because I love to knit doesn't mean I should open a knitting store, right? It's really about understanding problems from the person who has the problem's perspective. Once we understand the problem, then we move into an experimental and adaptation phase. That's really experimenting with potential solutions. And once we have evidence of a solution, then we sort of move into an advocacy and implementation mode. Again, the point here is that entrepreneurs, successful, experienced entrepreneurs, tend to behave like detectives rather than gamblers or fortune tellers, right? It's when you look closely, it's really the scientific method. That's how experienced entrepreneurs tend to behave. So a very simple definition of mindset. We define entrepreneurship as an opportunity discovery process. Well, a mindset is simply the underlying knowledge structures and cognitive processes that influence our behavior. It's the underlying beliefs and thought processes that influence our behavior. It's very simple. I'm italicizing the word underlying because the vast majority of our mindset operates beneath our conscious awareness. So when we think about the entrepreneurial mindset, we think about these 5 core concepts that we refer to as the mechanisms of human agency. And just in case there's anyone doesn't understand what the term human agency refers to, our individual ability to set and achieve our desired goals, our ability to sort of navigate the system within which we happen to live and function and work, the social structure. So we look at a person's sense of self-efficacy, and that Albert Bandura defined as domain-specific confidence. And let me just back up one second. You'll notice in the core of this wheel is the core underlying belief of the entrepreneur, which I skipped over. I want to dig into for just a moment. It's this underlying belief that it's my responsibility to make myself useful to my fellow human. And rarely do I ever hear an entrepreneur articulate that. This is a deeply held, mostly unconscious assumption that they're operating from. But the sort of the employee mindset of the last century is really, it's my job to get a credential, and someone else, I'll expect to work within an established organization where the useful thing has already been determined, and I will fulfill a predetermined, well-defined role. And that's becoming less relevant. So in today's world. But the point here is this core assumption of the entrepreneur is it's up to me to figure out how to maximize my usefulness to others. And that's a mindset we can apply whether we're working in a minimum wage job or we want to set out to change the world. It really doesn't matter. So, okay, back to the 5 mechanisms of human agency. Self-efficacy is domain-specific confidence, an internal locus of control. That's a deeply held belief that I am responsible for my own outcomes, as opposed to someone with an external locus of control who believes that fate, luck, circumstances, or powerful others are basically controlling my life. We look for intrinsic motivation, and that's what we tend to see in entrepreneurs. They're not just motivated by money, they're motivated by meaning. They care about the problem they're trying to solve. The psychological literature is very clear on this. People who are intrinsically motivated outperform those who are extrinsically motivated. So it makes a huge difference in the person's ability to persist, right? And it doesn't have as much to do with the person itself. It has more to do with the nature of the goal they're pursuing, okay? We see resiliency, which is, again, the ability to optimistically interpret adversity. And that's what we see in entrepreneurs is sort of an optimistic explanatory style that fosters resiliency, the ability to keep getting back up after we get knocked down. Lastly, we tend to see a growth mindset, a willingness and a belief that my talent or abilities are not fixed. They can be developed through deliberate practice. So these are these 5 core beliefs, the mechanisms of human agency that we see within the entrepreneurial mindset. So I talked about inspiring and engaging the student. Within the Ice House programs, there are a variety of video case studies of these underdog entrepreneurs who came from nothing, who overcame adversity, who didn't have access to resources, power, and privilege, yet they somehow managed to figure out something that was useful to other people, and that is what enabled them to ultimately rise above their circumstances. And I won't get into the stories now, but there's some pretty amazing entrepreneurs in here. The point is there are these unlikely entrepreneurs in every community. They're just basically being ignored. So the Ice House program is evolved into 3 basic offerings. There's the original Ice House entrepreneurship program. There's an adaptation as a student success program that's meant for all students coming into a community college to take this course to learn how to succeed in college and in life by embracing an entrepreneurial mindset. Then we've also sort of distilled the original edition into the small business edition, specifically for people that have self-identified that want to start a business. So 3 different editions. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. The Ice House program is being used all over the world in ways I could not have anticipated when I began in 2011. When we launched 2012, excuse me. It's being used in middle schools, high schools, community and 4-year colleges, economic development, veteran initiatives, small business, libraries, reentry programs, city governments, nonprofit organizations all over the world have adopted the Ice House program in a myriad of applications. I want to talk about some of the impact of this program. One in particular, for those of you who are in the community college world, very well understand that student persistence is an enormous challenge. And I think the number is about 50%, 50-some percent of community college students that enroll in the first semester, only about half remain at the second semester. Well, We did a blind study at one community college with 1,000 students who were enrolled randomly in the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. We saw a 28% increase in persistence to the second semester. And a big reason for that is the self-authoring component that's built into the Ice House program. Again, I'll get into that in the training. Oh, there we go again. So that was one of the big data points. The president of that college, Dr. Lance Bolton, said initially he thought they meant 2.8%, which he said he would have been happy with. Had him re-crunch the data, no, it's 28%. All right. The Ice House programs are being used across Mexico in high schools. 7,500 high school seniors are taking the Ice House program every year. In Prepatech, there's 31 campuses across Mexico. The outcomes report for 2017 is published on our website. The 2018 report will be published very soon. Entire communities are now embracing the Ice House program to spread it from the classroom out into the community in libraries and small business development centers. Colorado Springs has a website developed to the Ice House program. Erie, PA is doing the same thing. Those are two communities I just wanted to bring to your attention. One of the astonishing things that happened in Erie is they just completed a project where they put 850 7th grade students through the Ice House program. The outcomes were so impactful. It was funded by United Way. They made a video about it. You can Google search this term. I'll send you the video in the link in the show notes after we're done here. But one of the points I want to bring up, the Ice House program is designed as a framework that you, the facilitator, can ratchet up or ratchet down depending on the audience and the desired outcomes. So the course is being used in a range from 7th graders to high school seniors, to community and four-year colleges and universities, to prison reentry, to postdoctoral seminars, nonprofit, government application. There's a pretty widespread here. It's up to the facilitator. It's designed so the facilitator can adjust the program to the user, to the end user. So again, in Albuquerque, the Central New Mexico Community College, Kathy Winograd picked up the program. They're using it throughout the community. The mayor of Albuquerque saw what the program was doing. They're now in the process of putting 6,000 city government workers through the Ice House program. I will send you a link to that video that was made about that. The mayor's office was so astonished with the impact that the program had on city government workers that he now committed to all 6,000 city government employees. I am proud to say that the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program has been presented to the United Nations General Assembly in New York. It's been presented as a solution to poverty to a Papal Council on Peace and Justice at the Vatican in Rome. I also presented the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program to the European Commission in Brussels about 2 years ago. So the Kauffman Foundation has described the Ice House program as redefining entrepreneurship in classrooms and communities around the world. So here's the opportunity. I'm going to stop talking here in just a minute. So through a partnership with Kauffman and Eli, we are offering a $150,000 scholarship opportunity to train 60 facilitators and provide curriculum for students throughout the community and college and technical system in West Virginia. There will be 2 facilitator trainings held in West Virginia. One is in October, the second is in February. There are only 30 slots available in each location. That's it. So that's a 3-day training program. People pay $2,000 per person to come to this program. to come through this training. We've trained approximately 2,000 educators from 5 continents. This is a scholarship opportunity at no cost to you to attend this training, to learn how to implement the Ice House entrepreneurship programs in your classrooms and your communities. Now, the other point I wanted to make is that you can learn how to implement the Ice House program as a standalone 3-credit-hour entrepreneurial mindset course, or you can learn how to deliver the Ice House Student Success Program as a 3-credit-hour course. You can learn how to deliver the Small Business course as a 1-credit, 3-credit, however you see fit. You can also, we also have a classroom kit that has materials and components of the Ice House program that you can infuse into other disciplines. So we've developed a variety of ways to teach the Ice House program as a standalone course, or we have tools for you that will be scholarship to you, that will enable you to teach it as an interdisciplinary, infuse it in other learning programs. So that's the big deal. What we're trying to do here, what we're saying is this, you know, we went to Kaufman and we said, look, community colleges could and should be sort of the hub of entrepreneurial learning and activity in any community. Community colleges are ideally suited for this. So the goal here is to create a national model for other statewide community college systems to shift entrepreneurship from the perimeter to the core, to foster entrepreneurial thinking in their classrooms and their communities. That's the goal, to use the West Virginia Community and Technical College System to create a national model. There will be 2 standalone 3-day facilitator trainings. The first one in October 15th through 17th is in Fairmont, West Virginia. It will be followed up with, daggone it, there it goes again. It will be followed up by the February training in South Charleston, West Virginia on February 20th through 22nd. There are only 30 seats left in each,